Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, August 16th. We start with our privacy scan. From a major airline cyber attack exposing sensitive travel documents, to new scam alerts, and an urgent warning about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We have an exercise in contrast, with access to information stories including commitments for greater transparency from newly declared Grand Chief of the Cree Nation, Paul John Murdoch, and a move under new legislation by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith to erase 8 years of publicly available expense records. We'll wrap with the growing influence of artificial intelligence on how young people are monitored and policed, ending with the godfather of AI on what he believes is the only way humanity can survive the rise of superintelligent machines. Let's dive in. We begin with WestJet, where a cyber attack earlier this year exposed personal information, including details from passports and other travel documents for some passengers. The information taken varies from person to person, but may include name, date of birth, email address, mailing address, phone number, gender, and recent travel booking history, including travel booking numbers. The airline says credit card, debit card, and password data were not taken, but stolen details could still be used for identity theft or fraud. WestJet is offering affected customers 2 years of free monitoring, and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner has launched an investigation. In FIPA's view, these types of so-called solutions are woefully inadequate. As we've seen in the BC health breach, impacts can be felt years and, in some cases, decades after the fact, and the consumer bears all the immediate time and monetary expense of changing their logins and passwords, and in some cases, SIN numbers, because a company may have improperly collected, monitored, or stored the information under their control. Next up, from Christian Collington, an LGI reporter at the IFP in Ontario, there's a new scam making the rounds by text message. Fraudsters are sending fake speeding ticket notifications through the town's automated speed enforcement program. The town stresses it never sends such notices by text. Legitimate penalty orders are mailed, include bylaw details, and never request personal information through unsecured channels. The town also emphasizes a digital copy of the image taken, and an enlargement of the license plate is mailed to the registered plate holder. Residents are urged not to click suspicious links or respond to text messages from suspicious numbers. And on the international stage, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says famine in Gaza has reached unimaginable levels, warning that new Israeli restrictions on international aid will worsen starvation. She joined 24 foreign ministers from Europe, Asia, and Australia, calling for immediate access for humanitarian organizations and condemned the killing of Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza, reiterating that journalists are civilians and must be protected. Israel denies widespread claims that starvation is taking place in Gaza, as it imposes strict controls on aid entering the territory and how it's distributed. Last week, forums from the UN organizations and partners operating in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip called for a halt to Israeli policies, sharing sensitive personal information about their Palestinian employees, or face termination. In Ontario, proposed updates to municipal codes of conduct would allow councils to remove members for misconduct, but critics say requiring a unanimous vote makes actual removals unlikely. For years, municipalities have voiced the need for updated laws to deal with problematic councillors. The proposed bill comes after several years of municipalities calling for changes to address workplace harassment, and they allow for stricter penalties. Some municipalities are calling for a supermajority vote and additional sanctions, while others emphasize the need for an appeal process and independent oversight. Next up, we have a few stories from the local journalism initiative to share with you. From the Niagara region, Ed Smith, LGI reporter at The Pointer, brings us into Welland as they consider a controversial $40 million regional grant for a luxury housing development. This despite minimal environmental remediation costs and no affordable housing component. A Freedom of Information request reveals that many of the projects St. Catharines Mayor Matt Sisko, a vocal program advocate, has highlighted as successes have either declared bankruptcy or remain unbuilt years after receiving approval. Critics call it corporate welfare and warn the request would lock in taxpayer obligations for decades. Also from Ontario, Michelle Konski, LGI reporter at the Canadian Jewish News, reports that a national Jewish education group is attacking identity politics in schools, describing it as fueling anti-Semitism. The Jewish Educators and Families Association of Canada, or JEFA, has tabled a report that it claims provides evidence that school programs designed to include identity-based frameworks create anti-colonial and therefore anti-settler and anti-Zionist bias that meets their definition of anti-Semitic behavior. JEFA contends that these programs, quote, decide who gets empathy, who gets resources, and who is branded as an oppressor, erasing what it describes as Jewish indigeneity and minimizing anti-Semitism. JEFA makes 25 recommendations aimed at the Ministry of Education, school boards, faculties of education, and the Ontario College of Teachers and Teachers Unions. JEFA says its research drew on Freedom of Information requests. From Canada's National Observer, LGI reporter Rochelle Baker brings us news about BC's salmon farms. In British Columbia, documents obtained through access to information reveal the federal government is bracing for an exodus of major open net salmon farm operators following the 2029 phase-out deadline. The federal government is preparing for the possible exit of international salmon farm operations on the BC coast, following the government's promise last summer to phase out open net pen farms by 2029. Officials warn this could disrupt supply chains for closed containment farms and raise new disease control challenges if eggs need to be imported. Turning to news from Patrick Quinn, LGI reporter at The Nation, newly declared Grand Chief of the Cree Nation, Chief Paul John Murdoch, is already taking steps toward greater transparency, including creating open folders for all correspondence to and from his office. Council meetings will focus on specific topics throughout the year, such as housing or the budget, to help clarify agendas and encourage stakeholders to participate. Murdoch plans to focus upcoming council meetings on single themes, from housing to justice reform, to ensure accountability and community engagement. Murdoch wants the CNG to have a closer relationship with the Cree Trappers Association and hopes to visit with leaders at their upcoming annual General Assembly in Wemindji. Staying with Indigenous topics, Sanya Gupta, LGI reporter from Canada's National Observer, brings us news about how Indigenous-led consultations are underway on medical assistance in dying, or MAID. Medical assistance in dying became legal in Canada in 2016 for adults with grievous and irredeemable conditions where death is reasonably foreseeable. Since then, eligibility has gradually expanded, including plans to broaden access to those with mental illness as their sole condition. Documents obtained through access requests reveal that the federal government has invested more than $3.3 million to support Indigenous-led consultations across the country around MAID. The documents indicate many communities see MAID as conflicting with cultural beliefs, fearing systemic barriers mean it could be chosen for lack of alternatives. Leaders are calling for more culturally safe care and deeper ongoing dialogue before expanding eligibility. And in Alberta, the access and privacy hits from new legislation just keep coming. As of August 1st, a new policy removes a requirement that the Premier, ministers, deputy ministers, and senior staff must publicly disclose receipts for expenses over $100. Removing the requirement to publish receipts for expenses over $100 going forward sees the Conservatives revising history and erasing the prior 8 years of records from public access. The Information and Privacy Commissioner, Diane McLeod, says the changes reduce transparency, while critics accuse the government of deliberately weakening public accountability. According to the Treasury Board and Finance, receipts are still required to be provided when claiming expenses, but they will no longer be made public. Be sure to check out our show notes to find links to all our background and ongoing information around the changes in Alberta. In international news, we start with Trump and Putin. Past meetings between Russian and U.S. presidents have ranged from the Cold War to warm relations and arms treaties and post-Crimea sanctions and heightened tensions. Trump's first term included a controversial 2018 press conference in Helsinki, where he appeared to accept Putin's denials of election interference. Since Trump returned to the White House earlier this year, he and Putin have had about half a dozen publicly disclosed telephone conversations, though the war in Ukraine has strained U.S.-Russia relations. Access to information has provided unique insight into these past meetings, and we'll be anxious to see how that trend continues after Alaska. Turning to other news, Letitia James is the New York Attorney General, who won a $454 million civil fraud judgment against President Trump and other cases against the NRA involving whistleblower protections. Trump's Justice Department is now investigating James for alleged civil rights violations, mortgage fraud, and has also subpoenaed records from her NRA lawsuit. Critics say it's political retribution. James and her attorneys deny any wrongdoing. The Justice Department has also extended similar scrutiny to California Senator Adam Schiff, another prominent Trump critic. And finally, we turn to Trump and the Epstein case. A new lawsuit by Democracy Forward seeks Justice Department and FBI records on how the Trump administration handled the sex trafficking investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, including any communications with Trump himself. The lawsuit, filed in federal court in Washington, appears to be a first of its kind. The group says it submitted requests under the Freedom of Information Act for the records related to communications about the case in late July that have not yet been fulfilled. The filing comes after the administration refused to release additional documents despite earlier assurances, prompting accusations of a government cover-up from both political parties. Turning to AI. AI-powered surveillance tools in U.S. schools are triggering serious consequences for students, even when context shows no real threat. The Associated Press reports on cases where children were arrested, strip-searched, or sent to alternative schools after monitoring software flagged jokes or offhand comments. In Tennessee, one 8th grader was even under arrest. According to her mother, she was interrogated, strip-searched, and spent the night in a jail cell. Surveillance systems in American schools increasingly monitor everything students write on school accounts and devices. School districts across the country use software like Gaggle and Lightspeed Alert to track kids' online activities, looking for signs they might hurt themselves or others. Critics warn that such systems can criminalize kids for careless words, while companies argue they've helped prevent suicides and violence. In the gaming world, Roblox is releasing an open-source version of its AI moderation tool, Sentinel, to help detect predatory behavior in chats. The game is rolling out an open-source version of an artificial intelligence system it says can help preemptively detect predatory language in game chats. The system analyzes billions of daily messages for grooming patterns and has already led to over 1,000 reports to child protection authorities this year. The move comes as the company faces lawsuits and criticism accusing it of not doing enough to protect children from predators. The company hopes other platforms will adopt the tool, though challenges remain in spotting subtle and long-term risks. And we close with a report from a conference with Geoffrey Hinton, a godfather of AI, who says humanity's survival in the face of superintelligent AI may depend on building maternal instincts into machines so they can genuinely care for people. Speaking at an industry conference, Hinton argued that current strategies that attempt to keep AI submissive won't work. He urges researchers to focus on fostering compassion before it's too late. Hinton said that if it's not going to parent him, it's going to replace him. He went on to say super intelligent, caring AI mothers most likely won't want to get rid of the maternal instinct because they don't want us to die. As always, we hope today's stories help you stay informed about the latest issues surrounding privacy, information management, and public transparency. To help us keep the mics on, be sure to subscribe through FIPA News Monitoring or consider a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music in today's show was composed by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thank you for joining. A big FIPA thank you to all our contributors, reporters, and outlets that make this podcast possible, and to you, our listeners, who help make it successful. Stay safe and stay informed.